Thank you. Very helpful. All right. So again, sorry, just for the recording, we do have quorum. We started the meeting at 1:08. We can't pass any minutes yet, but we'll come back to it once Jennifer's in the room. And we were discussing number 8 for Angela, go ahead and put your hand down unless you had something else. We were discussing future meetings and changing up, attempting to streamline. So our goal is to get a set of recommendations from this task force to the Board of Supervisors on the design and develop, or at least the development standards before the end of the year. And so in order to do that, we are going to produce a report that shows the parts of Article 73, the draft, and Article 72 that mirror state regulations. We'll present that to the task force to see if there's anything they want to do a recommendation on, but otherwise we'll just consider that stuff all to stay the same. That way we can focus on more of the policy decisions where the county ordinance differs from state, or where state doesn't address a part of our code topic. All right, were there any further questions?
Yes, Jennifer Smith arrived just a minute or
awesome.
two ago.
Thanks, Jennifer. Did you hear my synopsis?
I did, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, good. So now we got serious quorum. Hey, Rebecca, can we do any of the minutes now that Jennifer's here?
Yeah, we can start with April 22nd.
Excellent. Okay, so if there are no further questions on item number 8, then we'll go back to number 3. Take up minutes from the April 22nd, 2024 meeting. That is page 3 of our agenda packet. Excellent. So we have a number of people who are joining us as attendees. Just as a general housekeeping rule, please keep your mics muted unless you're talking, or unless you're asked to talk, so that we're not listening to your garbage disposal or stuff like that. Email. Wait. Okay. Are there any questions, comments from the task force before we open it up for public input? Again, this is April 22nd minutes for review. Seeing and hearing nothing in the room. Did anybody in Zoom have any questions or comments on those draft minutes? Seeing nothing, we'll take it back to task force for action. Not all at once.
Yeah.
I would move to approve the April 22nd, 2024 minutes.
And I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Okay.
Is there anybody opposed?
Nara and I are abstaining.
Okay, good. Michelle, did you get that?
Yes.
I can't hear it very well on this side, so we're gonna have trouble doing the minutes later. Excellent. Okay, did it pass? How many people abstained?
Well, Nara and I can't vote because we weren't here, so everybody else approved it, so it would pass.
Okay, okay. Moving on, June 17th minutes.
We can vote on these too.
Woohoo! Excellent. For those looking at the packet, that's on page 6. Any questions, comments from the task force? Seeing none, we'll open it up for public input. Anyone in the room in public wanting to speak to this item?
I am not in the public, but I have a question regarding number 7 on page 7. It says Director Turner opened public input and the following people spoke, and it has Jen, Nara, and I listed under the public input section. Just curious if it's meant to be that way or if that.
Nope. Thank you for catching that. That's an error.
Yeah.
Michelle, can you make a note that we need to just amend that? And that's not really a substantive change. That's just removing the members of the task force from public input listing.
It also happens at the 2 p.m. mark for Rebecca and Jennifer.
Yeah, again, 7 p.m.
Yep, I see that.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Oops.
Super. Thank you. Okay, if there are no further comments in the room, anybody in Zoom wishing to comment on those minutes, the June 17th minutes? Seeing nothing, we'll take it back to task force or, oh, and by the way, everybody attending in the public, if you did have a comment, feel free to raise your hand. So if you're just new to Zoom, that's on the bottom. If you toggle down to the bottom, you'll get all of those little icon thingies, and there should be a raise your hand. If not, there's a one in reactions. Go in there and you can raise your hand there. And that's how I'll know that you have public input. All right, bringing it back to task force for action.
Rebecca Harper moves to accept and file the minutes as amended.
Second, Nora Delvaca.
Awesome. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining?
Yeah, Paul and I will abstain. Neither one of us were here for that.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you
So
very
aye.
much.
Did you say aye?
Me?
Yeah, yep, passes.
Passes. Next, can we do July 29th?
Yep.
Woohoo. Excellent. Any comments, questions from the task force on July 9th or July 29th meeting? Seeing none, we'll open this for public inputs. Is there anybody? Ah, there we go. Go ahead, Holly. Wait, let me see. Do I have to? Nope, go ahead.
Oh, hi. On the section on section 8, where it has under amendments, this is just more a housekeeping thing because it makes it confusing, where it says for the purpose of developing a cannabis cultivation site should be avoided and minimized unless otherwise. No capital. And then a period after ordinance. Otherwise, the way it comes across is that pruning, it will not include pruning unless there's a countywide tree ordinance.
Good, good. Yep. That's a typographical error. We will correct that grammar. Thank you, Holly. Good catch.
One other thing too, I did have public comment on.
Go right ahead.
No, I had public comment under number 9.
Ah, okay. We'll add you to number 9. Excellent. Thank you.
Water use?
What's that? That's on the next page, on page 11th.
It's the public comment,
Oh, at the bottom. No. Where?
item 9.
The
I don't know
general,
why.
the general public comment.
Oh,
at the
yes,
end of the
yes.
meeting.
Right
Thank
before
you.
adjournment.
Holly Harris.
Moran, my same comment regarding the previous minutes also applies
Yep.
to this minutes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe go through that and just double check on anything that we might have missed.
I think I zoomed in for that meeting. Some of my comments were by Zoom. Yeah.
Okay.
So I might have been technically a member of the public for that one.
Oh,
That could be true.
no, even if you zoomed in, you're not speaking for the public. You're just not voting.
Yep. Okay.
Task force. Holly, did you have anything else? Your hand is still up. Okie dokie. So we'll take that back to the task force, seeing no further comments or no further hands raised in Zoom. Back to the task force for action as amended. Nothing happens till somebody makes a motion.
Will Weiss moves to approve the July 29th, 2024 minutes.
Thank you.
Kelly will second.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays before we get to abstains? Okay, any abstentions?
Paul and I, oh, sorry. Paul and I will be abstaining from that one.
Great. Does it still pass?
Nora as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Excellent. Then the last set of minutes that we have are August 26th. Are we good to go with that one, Rebecca?
Yes.
Thank you for being reliably the person I.
I'm on the minutes, boss.
Are there any questions, comments from task force on the August 26th minutes?
Yeah, I think there's an error in the draft statement under draft statement for consideration. Rebecca Harper motioned to amend the draft statement to the following: cultivation cannabis shall not rely on gasoline. That doesn't make sense, so I'm assuming it's an error.
I think the word should be reversed. Cannabis cultivation.
Yeah.
Yep. Noted. Thanks. Any further comments, concerns, questions before we open public input?
Jen's name is misspelled under 7. Same,
Under 7.
yeah, third paragraph. Under 7.
Whose name is misspelled? Oh,
Jennifer.
Jennifer's. Yeah. You. All right, let's. Oh wait, sorry.
I'm curious. Oh, okay. Never mind.
All right, opening it up for public input. Is there any member of the public in our room today that has comments on, or comments on public? Comments on the minutes. Seeing none, is there anyone in Zoom who wants to comment on the August 26th minutes? Seeing none, going back to task force for action.
So, on the first page, the way the agenda is laid out, there's numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you have the subsections that are also numbered. There's no subsection 7. We go straight from subsection 6 to subsection 8. And may I also request that maybe we don't number the subsections that way? It's kind of confusing, right? Because we have item 7 that starts with subsection 3. So yeah, I don't know. I think maybe that could be perfected.
Under A, so prohibited. Or you know what we could is we could add just 1 and 2, just like their titles, so that we understand the continuity. Yeah, let's do that. Cool. Yep. Good idea.
Otherwise, Rebecca Harper moves to accept and file the minutes as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second, Norwood Albacher.
Awesome. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays before we get to abstentions? Any abstentions on this one?
If Paul's on Zoom, can Paul be the vote for the fire? He was at that meeting, or is that not?
Yeah, if Paul was at the meeting, then he counts as present. All right, that motion passes. Well done. We just cleared our whole table of minutes. That's awesome. Thank you. We're almost caught up. All right, so moving on to, let's see, where are we? Okay. So where we left odor was that we were going to contact air quality and then bring that back to the task force. And I know I've spoken to Doug about this like over the past years, and they do not do any sort of monitoring for cannabis. Michelle, did you have anything else to add on that one?
No, just that last time we talked about how the draft 73 did have like a measurement and some sort of range, but air quality said that that's pretty difficult to do, and that they don't do that, and then our staff also doesn't, and it was a matter of like it's still subjective in a way, as I understand, and so it's just not the best method of doing that. And then you and I talked about other potential solutions or options as far as like increasing setbacks or different exclusion zones or having it in the development standards, otherwise vegetative screening, things of that nature.
So what we have right now then in the ordinance is basically kind of a statement. There shall not be negative impacts to the surrounding environment for odor. Did the task force want to change this wording or leave it the same, remove it? What's the feel for the task force?
I have a question, if I can. It reads it shall not degrade the air quality, is what it says in the requirements. It says the permitting will not degrade the air quality.
Oh, could you state your name for the record, please? Actually, if you want to hold on a minute, we're still on task force input, but we will definitely open this up for public input in just a second.
No problem.
Yeah.
She'll open the public comment after the. And just to clarify, I just pulled up the email from Doug. He said the board took the district out of regulation of odor for cultivation activities a number of years ago. And then he talks about not having authority over the equipment, and sort of the nuances with it. Just wanted to add that.
Does task force have any comment before we open it up to public input?
So this is Will Weiss. Did you say that the Air Quality Management District's comment was that the Board of Supervisors removed them from consideration related to odor?
That's what it says for cannabis for regulation.
A county agency superseded a state agency. That sound,
It's the county agency.
it is?
Yeah, it's a county.
Yeah.
Company.
These two, cool. My mistake.
Yeah, the board of supervisors, well, they do have their board of directors, but the board of supervisors does sit and hear air quality control district. They're kind of part of the state though, because the state does the air quality stuff, like identifies where our basin is and things like that too.
I believe it was 2019. That's why they're paying that fee.
Let's go ahead and open that up for public input. What's before the task force is the current language that cannabis-related permits shall not propagate objectionable odors which cause injury, detriment, nuisance, or annoyance to any considerable number of persons or to the public, or that endanger the comfort, repose, health, or safety of any of those persons or the public. So what is before the task force is to maintain this language or change it or remove. We had someone in the room, and then we'll get to the Zoom room. Keep your hand up, Holly, and go ahead and state your name for the record, please.
Me? Oh, Bill Wilson. On talking about odor, I'm said the county permit requirements just says all cannabis permittees shall not degrade the county's air quality as determined by the Lake County Air Quality Management. I have emails from the Air Quality Management said they have no way of measuring it. I have offered to the county suggestions of instruments to measure the smell. I don't know where that's gone. I think it got forwarded to whoever, I'm not sure. And also I have emails from the Cannabis Andrew at the time and Code Enforcement Linda at the time saying the county doesn't recognize one complaint. So one complaint for odor, the county will not act on that. I have emails saying they're not going to proceed on it.
From who? From Andrew?
Andrew said that, and Linda Rosa said that in emails to me. Saying the county doesn't recognize.
I don't know that that's accurate.
Only one complaint.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know that that's accurate because we did get a complaint about odor on a cannabis processing and we responded to it. So, but neither Linda nor Andrew are actually still with our department.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But at the time, they said they were, I had the emails that said they will, there was no sense in me proceeding if nobody's gonna do anything about it, the way I felt, so that's why I'm here.
I see. Okay, thank you. Did you have any suggestions regarding the wording of the item or the text in the ordinance? Because that's what's actually before the task force right now, though I do appreciate hearing about what you experienced. County departmental policy is not what's on the agenda today. But just that being said, I want to make sure that what gets out to the public is if you have a complaint, we need to hear it. So yeah, the answer that we're just not going to do anything about it is not acceptable. That's not what we should do. So please
I'm gonna
know.
give him my card, Mireya.
Thanks. Huh?
I'll give him my card and we can follow
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Yeah, we'll get that fixed. Thank you for being here today.
The other question I had, I don't know if anybody else noticed it on our property tax on the back of the envelope, and I have it printed here. It says, Lake County has determined that inconveniences or discomforts associated with such agricultural operations or activities shall not be considered a nuisance.
So that is the right to farm ordinance, and that does not apply to cannabis.
It's a Lake County, Patrick Sullivan, tax assessor collector, was printed on the back of our tax.
Yeah, that's the Lake County right to farm ordinance, and it applies to all agricultural commodities, which at this time does not include cannabis. So you're right. If you stink, if you're getting odor impacts due to like primary fermentation pomace from winemaking, too bad. Walnuts, pears, too bad. But it does not apply to cannabis at this time.
And cannabis is not considered an agricultural product, but it can be in an intensive agricultural zone.
Cannabis is not considered an agricultural commodity. And this is a bit of government ease because that's a federal designation. What is a commodity? And at this time, since cannabis has not been legalized federally, it does not have the same entitlements that what we kind of refer to as conventional agriculture does have. So it is considered an agricultural product. It is not considered an agricultural commodity. And you got to hit that commodity status in order to qualify for the right to farm ordinance.
Meaning they're not allowed to export their odor or lights. Yeah.
Meaning that the impacts that one encounters because of conventional agriculture in our county does not apply to cannabis. They do not have the same entitlement. It could be odor, it could be other things as well.
And how does the county issue an ordinance against odor without any means of checking or verifying it or gauging it?
We're going to take that conversation off the table and maybe we can have a discussion further because you'd want to talk to the agricultural commissioner as well. That's not really a CDD thing. It's housed elsewhere in the code. But I'd be happy to direct you to Catherine Vanderwall for that history on how that was made. But that's not on our agenda today. Let's go into the Zoom room. Go ahead, Holly.
Oh, hi there. This is a really tough one, and I don't necessarily have any suggestions, but it is a problem for a lot of people. And, possibly there must be some way that you can add something in based on a number of complaints, et cetera. I think at the last meeting, someone, and it might have been Margot, said that it states considerable number of persons, but if you live in a rural area, you aren't going to have a considerable number of persons, but the majority of the people may not, like the smell. Once again, the thing would be to consider adding increased setbacks based on size of the project, location of the project, typical prevailing winds, if it's vegetated or it's open, such as across the lake, things have a tendency to go more. But I'm not that much help on this, but I do think that it needs a bit more thought because it is a big issue to the public.
Thank you. Thanks, Holly. Okay, it looks like I've got Angela and then Sarah. Go ahead, Angela.
Thank you, Maria. So I noticed in your motion for consideration, it says add annual updated information. Right now our complaints are made to CDD, and then are the complaints included in the annual report? Is there a section in the annual report for, we got this many complaints for this, and this, or?
I think there is a section in the annual report because yet the permittee needs to report on complaints and what was done for them.
Okay, so
It might be though complaints that go to the permittee because I don't know that. Well, I guess yeah, we would reach out to the permittee as we follow up.
okay, so if the permittee receives the complaint, they're required to submit it to CDD with their annual report. I'm just wondering if we can create like just to make sure that, so if it is a year after year after year on their annual reports, that they are getting odor complaints, that they're addressed, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Go ahead, Sarah. Oh, wait, maybe I have to add you. Allowed to talk. Ask to unmute.
Hi there.
Hey, Sarah.
So just, I made this comment before, but I want to refresh it that odor is very highly subjective, and because each different location, each different operation has such a unique set of circumstances, that I think that, the language we have now, in my experience of moving projects through the process, does allow a lot of review and consideration of odor and odor mitigation by county staff and planners as they're presenting a project, and by commissioners as they're reviewing and considering a project. So I think this might be one of those cases that one size fits all doesn't work well. And we don't really have the perfect tool to measure and quantify odor. But what we can look at as impacts in the setting that it's being considered. And I think the current process is working well. And I think there are, recourse. There is recourse available if it becomes a problem. And I would suggest that we continue with the current approach. I know it's something that both staff and the planning is very sensitive to. They consider it with a high level of priority if neighbors express concern over proximity to a project. And in the hearings that I've been part of, many different methods and technologies have been discussed for outdoor cultivation. There are a number of mitigations, and for processing centers and indoor facilities and greenhouses, there are also another set of options. And I think this is a situation where case by case review, approval, consideration, and diligence does work. And I just want to underline that although it's hard to measure, it doesn't mean there's nothing in place to address it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Margot has a hand up in the room. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, I can't see that. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Sarah, I'm lowering your hand. There we go. Okay.
Margot Kamara. It's been brought up earlier at this meeting, in a previous meeting, in fact, that there is technology involved, and it seems that even though there has been an earlier decision by the Board of Supervisors to remove air quality from the regulation of odor, I think because, we have matured more in the whole process of getting used to cannabis cultivation, that we look into the technologies and to see if we could get rid of that subjectiveness and to come to a more objective measure of, okay, what is acceptable and at what range do we have to really think about mitigation. And so I would suggest that we go back to air quality, and ask them about what technologies they're aware of, but also some members of the public have done some research and have identified some technologies that are available, and to see if we can come to find some solution that is more objective, so we can manage it, because we don't want to have a problem with odor, because we as a county are trying to attract more visitors and become a premier outdoor destination. And we also don't want to have a problem where neighbors' property values decline because of a persistent problem with odor season after season. Thank you.
Thanks, Margot. So as the task force considers amendments to this section or leaving it in place, I also wanted to let you know of an alternative, not changing the wording, but you also have the option to add like the task force recommends this, that, or the other be done, or something like that, kind of as a side note that or a narrative to accompany any action you might take. So just keep in mind that would also be an option for for the task force. But I don't see any further public input, so we'll bring it back to the task force. Michelle, you had a couple suggestions?
It looks like Bill has another comment, if that is amenable to you. He had his hand raised.
Yes, there is technology that is available to be as objective. It's a threshold dilution measure to give you how many parts of ratio there is of the smell bad. The other thing I'm not hearing is the health, negative health things that the cannabis terpenes have from the EPA has them, the National Library of Medicine has it, NIH, they're all saying there are dangers of the terpenes causing ozone, which is a ground hugging ozone. It's a health hazard. I'm not hearing that being spoken other than just the smell being bad. So I don't know why the health part of it hasn't been included in this unless it hasn't been looked into. But I have 3 or 4 researchers here that have said it is a problem. Denver, Colorado has spent a lot of time and money investigating it because they were first in the pot business, and it is a problem. It causes ozone, which is a health hazard to the youth, the environment, and anyway, I just would like to hear more about the protection we're getting from health benefit.
Thank you. All right, so the section that we have before us is regarding odor.
We have one more.
Go ahead. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Definitely. Andrew Dobbs Kramer. I just wanted to reiterate a public comment I had made on a previous meeting about this as well. I've looked into these odor measuring devices as well, and what I've found is that they certainly do determine whether there is a smell present. What they don't do is show where it originated. So if you've got a neighbor complaint and you take one of these to a neighbor's property, you might very well say, hey, there's a lot of smell here, but actually proving that that came from the licensed grow next door and not a hemp cultivation down the road or an unlicensed grow is really not doable with those devices. That's a common stumbling block I've seen with this when it's used in policy. So I think the ordinance as written allows discretion for staff to go out there and try to make the determination.
All right, now we'll close public input, take it back to the task force.
I've got a few statements. Jennifer Smith. I think that when we're talking about terpenes and ozone and air, it's not just cannabis that gives off terpenes. And so we would be looking at other terpenes from other agricultural commodities, flowers, etc. So I think that that's unfair to isolate just the cannabis terpenes in that scenario. I agree with Margot in that the process of licensing and the farms has really matured through this process. We know a lot more today than we knew in 2016 when these regulations started. The process started, and through that evolution, it also brings us back to the statement made by Sarah in that, the approach of discretion by project, while it's definitely not something I tend to favor in this scenario, it has worked well. The subjectivity of this particular item is very sensitive. It's very hard to monitor. It's very hard to gauge pre-implementation of a project, during any studies for the project, and actually during the project. There are years where the odor can be very light. There are years that it can be very heavy. It could last for 3 weeks. It could last for 3 months. The winds change. I mean, there are years where I can't smell my farm from my home, and there are years that I can. I think that we've taken the correct approach, and maybe we just need to maybe acknowledge that in this. And then I too have been the subject of an odor complaint in 2018. The Air Quality Board came out. They had no means of judging if it was, you know, how many people it was bothering, or how objectionable it was. And then when we flew, when you pulled up Google Earth, we're surrounded by 7 illegal or unpermitted farms. So again, how do you determine where it's coming from? So I really think, God, I mean, I hate saying this, but there does need to be some flexibility in this portion of it. And I will once again advocate that this isn't something that we're going to have in the restriction and prohibited activities. It needs to move to something where it's more of a mitigated condition of the use permit. Because this section that we're talking about prohibited activities like tree removal, water diversion. And so I do want to go back to one of my original statements and make sure that we consider moving this from this section.
So if I could just add to that, I just want to let the task force know how we have proceeded to date. We do have some conditions that we use regularly, like vegetative screening or things that are put into place to minimize odor impacts. So then once the permit is active, when we get an odor complaint, for example, but we've gotten a couple mostly on the processing plants, not so much the cultivation sites, but we responded by going out there and kind of sniffing. Some days we could smell something, some days we didn't. You know, we did repeated visits, but what we also did was sent planners out there to sort of focus on the conditions of approval that had been approved to make sure that the project was operating within those conditions. And so far, just by doing that, it has taken care of the odor complaints that were lodged. But we do respond and we check to make sure that the conditions are in place, because a number of those do mitigate odor impacts. But that's how we roll it out. What's before the task force right now is, do we want to keep this statement part of a policy that we want the odor impacts to be mitigated so that they are not objectionable? That's what's before the task force.
We also, Mireya, if I could add, I'll say Michelle Ayers, since you can't see me, principal planner. Under the property management plan requirements, the first section is on air quality, and there's a subsection about a odor response program. So maybe that's, and it has, designated an individual providing property owners policies and procedures on what to do when they receive complaints. So maybe that's a section where we could parse some more of that out appropriately. But I just wanted to note for the record that it is also described within the requirements for property management plan.
Okay. Thank you. Is that Nara? Is that your hand up?
Yep. Yes. Hi, Nara Delwalka. I want to restate my issues with the word annoyance. If we are actually looking at that language, I think that's one subjective, whereas I believe there are definitions under nuisance, detriment, and injury at the county level. I don't think there's a definition for annoyance, so I think that might be difficult. I also don't think this is the section for this. I like this as a condition of approval, because every site, every permittee is going to have different topography around them, different wind patterns, different measures for mitigation might be. We're already doing things on a permit by permit basis. I think this is probably something that And then I also want to reiterate the amount of unlicensed cannabis activities that are happening. Most of the unpermitted grows are, a lot of them are doing processing on site and in a manner that's not in the code, and so that's going to generate a lot of odor as well. And some of those are doing both, indoor and greenhouse growing. So there's multiple turns, multiple harvests throughout the year, which means that there may be more odor coming from those than the permanent grows. And I don't know how you measure that.
Right. And a lot of that also is in the rollout of the program. It's how we handle it in the department. It does not necessarily all need to be spelled out here. The task force, should you decide to take action, could look something like what Nara just said. The task force recommends this be moved to a certain other section. The task force recommends that staff present the board with options for establishing standards or something like that. So I think that at that level of recommendation is what the board is looking for. Not that exact recommendation, because I'm totally leaving that up to you guys. I'm just saying examples, but that level of recommendation, not that we have to have the entire thing figured out today, just what the task force feels as far as the topic of odor.
Yeah. So Rebecca Harper, I think moving this to another section makes sense. So I'd like to see us maybe consider that in a separate motion. But based on the feedback, at least my perception of the feedback that we've heard from the community, but also from the Cannabis Task Force members, I do have amended language that I'd like to propose.
Can I ask a question before you propose it?
I'd love for you to do that.
Great. This is Will Weiss. So my question is this. Right now we're talking about leaving, at least tentatively anyway, a section in the conditions for approval related to odor, but which I think just a moment ago Nora said was something she thought was a good idea. Not trying to put words in your mouth. But what we're discussing are prohibited activities. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, does this present an issue of process where an existing grow site would not therefore, like it wouldn't even be valid to issue a complaint or to file a complaint related to odor if the prohibited activities section no longer addresses this topic? So what would, I guess is a question for Maria, I think, or, but what would happen if someone were to file a complaint about odor if following this meeting or following approval of any recommendation related here to the prohibited activities section no longer mentioned odor?
If it were not in prohibited activities, and I kind of think it's weird that it's in prohibited activities anyway, because it's more of an effect to be mitigated rather than an actual activity. But if it were not here, we would still be following up with an odor complaint, because we'd want to make sure that the conditions of approval and the mitigations that were put in place to make sure that odor was not a negative impact on the environment were in place and operating.
As well as following their property management plan. So
Yeah.
that's a part of it.
Exactly.
They're required to follow the property management plan, which includes odor and then any mitigation measures as a result of the STEM analysis too.
Sounds like we have another public comment request from Maria. I realize that's your decision. But...
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Bill Wilson. I have a couple of comments if I can. I know the response for the terpenes, there's all kinds of things, but every plant makes its own terpenes, and the ones from cannabis actually create ozone. A rose doesn't do that. Oleander doesn't do that. But so we have to specifically be concerned about those terpenes. If we remove any kind of, like in a property management plan, it says, here's what we're going to do as far as putting filters in. To me, a greenhouse is the only way to go, because you can keep it sealed and you can filter the activated carbon. But the follow-up, my personal experience is one of their neighbors got approved for the filters. They bought 5 filters, but the filter manufacturer says those are only good for 75,000 cubic feet, and they actually have 270,000 cubic feet. So the filters really aren't doing any good, but they got approved. And according to Linda in her email said, Well, we've already approved it. There's nothing we really can do because the planning commission already approved it. So now we're stuck. I think there needs to be more follow-up as far as the plan and initial study plans to say, here's what we're going to do.
Okay,
I've
thanks,
asked-
Mr. Wilson. That's also on departmental activities. So let's get back to the ordinance.
Any of that is okay. But and again, as many times as I've emailed and talked to people, I've still not found out whether they have the right amount or the correct filters in the place next to us 2 years later.
Okay.
So I'm not
Yeah.
sure what that.
Okay, Michelle can follow up with that after the meeting. Let's go ahead and close public input, take it back to the task force.
So perhaps, this is Jennifer speaking, perhaps to leave this in a place where people feel comfortable enough that they're allowed to make a complaint without pulling somebody's PMP, property management plan. Maybe we change it to the thing that is, the activity that's prohibited is excessive odor as determined by excessive odor as determined in accordance with or by the conditions of use permit and the property management plan. So that like violation of the mitigation plan or something like that. So that we can leave it in here, which gives a comfortable level to the public that it is being watched for. It is a complaint avenue that they do have, but that it then refers it back to the standards of your project are in your CUP and in your PMP. And it is the duty of the county in our annual inspections or at a complaint to make sure that those are being adhered to. And so maybe we look at that type of a road.
And that just made me remember that Rebecca was about to read off hers too, before we started.
Oh, I didn't have the words. She likely has the words.
Yeah. Rebecca,
Okay,
does that kind of reflect what you're thinking?
Yeah, my proposed language would read, commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors which cause injury or detriment to any considerable numbers of persons or to the public, or that endanger the health or safety of any of those persons of the public. All complaints received shall be recorded and investigated by CDD staff. Upon investigation, staff may make a recommendation for mitigation.
Question, how do they judge what is a smelly? And how many, you
I
say a
can't.
number
We
of people?
can't.
Is
We
it
can't.
one or
We
5
can't do
people
this.
or 6 people?
Mr. Wilson, we've already closed public input for now, but thank you. Is there any discussion amongst the task force on proposed language? I have a small issue with that just because I don't know that we're going to drive out every single time we get.
Well, investigation doesn't necessarily mean that you have to drive there.
Did you read that part again? That's
Yeah.
committing us to stuff?
Yeah. Absolutely. All complaints received shall be documented and investigated by CDD staff. Upon investigation, staff may make a recommendation for mitigation. You're committing to investigating it, which it
Okay,
seems
let's
like-
think about that because we get complaints in to code enforcement. Sometimes it does not result in a case getting opened. It will be investigated, but I don't know that we record every single call.
Well, just the complaint has to be documented, right? Like that you've received an odor complaint.
If people file a complaint, sometimes they'll call.
Right.
Like to
So
us,
then you would have
complaints
to
are in
file
writing.
that complaint. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's say filed complaints or received written. If we're gonna commit the department to something specific,
All written complaints shall be documented and investigated by CDD staff. Add the word written. That makes it better.
well, I think that's pretty much what we're already doing anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now people will know that that's what the process is.
Do we want to add a reference to the PMP or?
That would be changing the title of the actual section. Is that?
It would be referring or acknowledging that that plan was in the individual projects. So that we're pointing to the, I think, pull
Okay,
from what.
so commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors in violation of existing property management plans, which cause injury or detriment to any considerable number of persons or to the public, or that endanger the health or safety of any of those persons or the public. All written complaints shall be documented and investigated by CDD staff. Upon investigation, staff may make a recommendation for mitigation.
I would say, okay,
Wait, who are we making recommendations to?
To the property owner. Which is what you had stated you were basically doing, right? Is
Yeah.
if there's okay.
But I mean, if we're gonna say it on this one, if it's something that we're already doing anyway, I don't know that I need it. I don't know that I want it stated specifically in one section, because does that mean then we're not doing it on all the other sections? Or are we adding that wording just to make people feel good? I don't know. I don't know that that's the
Well,
right
I
way.
think there's been maybe some inconsistency in how complaints have been handled. So if it's my thought process is if that it's written out, especially in this section, which the public usually is what the public has contention with, then maybe that would help ease some of that for your department as well as for community members.
Yeah, I'm still not comfortable with that part, but this is a task force recommendation. This is not a Mireya Turner recommendation. So y'all keep talking.
what about, cannabis related permits shall not propagate objectionable odors? Or say your first line again, I feel like I would be really super comfortable if we just said that first in violation of your property management plan and conditional use permit, period. All complaints shall be, I don't even know, like, complaints shall be tracked within
Okay, so
the farmer's
commercial cannabis
annual review.
Commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors in violation of approved property management plans and conditions of approval, period. All written complaints received shall be investigated by CDD staff. All written complaints received shall be documented and investigated by CDD staff. Upon investigation, staff may make a recommendation for mitigation.
Not speaking for the staff, but definitely want to see them documented because we're already supposed to keep them documented in our annual review.
And the word mitigation makes me squirmy because it's in my brain totally. To see like that's my own issue.
Adopted a dog. Sorry about that. I'm gonna mute myself for a second, and she's chewing everything. I'll be right back.
I mean, to me, it sounds like it's on a good track of sort of meshing the two. I think shorter may be better in this case, like what you got, the track that you guys are on. What if, I don't even know if I'm allowed to offer this, but I will, and the task force can do with it what they will, but what if what you said, commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors in violation of approved property management plan and COAs. Should we say like all, because this is about what's prohibited. I think as far as the complaints and stuff, that could be further down the line in the ordinance with our processes maybe. So what if it says all complaints, all complaints received shall be documented, because this is about the applicant, like shall be documented in the annual monitoring reports. Something along those lines. You know what I mean? Like it's almost two separate things in my brain. It's like this part is about like what the applicant is.
We're not allowed to violate our PMP.
Yeah.
As regards to odor.
Right. And then I think they're further down in the ordinance is maybe where we can get into handling complaints on the staff side.
Do we know if there's a place for that to happen? Because I mean, it would seem silly to say we'll handle it later on without actually having it cut out for handling it later on.
Yeah, it could also be a portion that we add. Let's see. So yeah, because under property management plan, air quality, there's a bunch of paragraphs here, subsections. All cannabis communities shall attain authority from air quality, shall maintain authority to construct, shall prepare an odor response program that includes but is not limited to designating a certain person that is responsible 24 hours a day, providing property owners within 1,000 feet with contact information for odor complaints, policies and procedures describing the actions to be taken when an odor complaint is received, including the training provided, the description of potential mitigation measures to be implemented for reducing odors, contingency measures. So that's all in the PMP section that we would be referring to now.
So would we like it better if it read, commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors in violation of approved property management plans and conditions of approval? All complaints received must be documented in annual reports and followed up on by the permittee.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I love
Do
that, personally.
I like that.
We open it up for discussion.
Right, it also talks about, okay, resolution of complaints is in the security portion too currently. I think it's a better.
Discussion. And then
Anyone?
vote.
Not staff.
It's not just Rebecca and I. I mean, we could have had this done in a month.
So Richmond Kelly, I brought this up last meeting, almost a month ago. I have a real challenge when there's no metric involved. And I think maybe if we took the odor and the health and got rid of the health part, because that really trips people up. Most people, they're smelling, I think it's sulfurous compounds is the main thing. Is that right?
Terpenes.
So you can test for both of those. It's a particulate count. Because I have fire stations that do that on my property. It will tell me if their particulate count's too high, don't go outside. I don't see, and if I'm a company, if I'm a grower, I know I'm keeping my metric to where it should be. I don't want someone coming in and making me do very expensive things around my property. And if I'm a neighbor, I want to point to, they're within the metric, it sucks, it stinks, whatever. And I don't, personally carries away. But without that metric, I don't know how we go about creating these things, like the odor. I'm looking at it right now, reading objectionable. Oh man. And I'm listening to people, and my neighbors around me complain all the time about our grow on our 168 acres. We have no grow. So it's my neighbor, which is about 1.5 miles away. And but I can walk on any property, any grow annually during grow season. You can walk in there with your meter, every one of them. So you're not saying this one or this one. And then every one of them knows where they're at. And the complaints don't really matter because your metric says you guys are doing great. If we don't have that, I would hate to be the county on this one, or the grower, because you have all these great legal growers doing their jobs. They're within this metric that we don't technically have. But if we don't have it, how do we point? How do we fix? How do we make it better? How do we make neighbors stop literally losing their minds? And I know because we're surrounded by them. So how do we put that in there? Because this conversation to me makes no sense, and I appreciate what everyone's saying about it, but without a metric to say, this is what we're pointing at, I don't know where this goes, except it's going to get really ugly. And it sounds like it might be, beyond the growers, because my neighbors, they talk about it all the time. And like I said, I'm not a grower. But if I was, I'd want to be protected by knowing my metric was this. I would do the responsible thing, keep it within that, and then, don't bother me.
I think maybe we just turn this over to the board and say, you need to come up with some metrics, or it can't be in here.
But I think we've heard from lots of agencies that even if there were metrics, there wouldn't be the staff or resources to enforce that metric. So then you have like a metric that exists and no mechanism for enforcing that, which is even more useless than having something that's a little bit subjective, but that could actually be followed up upon. I mean, if people are going to get tripped up about the word objectionable, even though it includes also in violation of literally metrics, then like they're going to get tripped up over that. And there's nothing I feel I could do or anybody could do to help them not get tripped up over that as well.
I mean, and truth be told, as history presents itself, we had a fee that we paid to the Air Quality Control Board for 2 years, and they couldn't substantiate whether it was objectionable or not, and so the board remove the requirement.
Right, I
So
think
we've
I know
already
we've
determined
been
that
down
that's- yeah.
that path and it didn't work, so.
It could be a recommendation of this task force that, that the board develop thresholds for objectionable odors.
It could be.
Or
So
increase
right now, there's a
setbacks.
motion on the floor. It has to be discussed by the body.
There was a motion?
And then, yes, I
missed-
made a motion. And then I
Okey-doke.
opened it up for discussion. So now the process is that we have to vote on that. And if it's not approved, then we can discuss another route. But if it is approved, then that's how that works. We can't actually discuss other routes until the motion on the floor is discussed and voted upon.
Rebecca, I did not realize you made a motion. Could you restate that, please, for the record?
Yeah, so the amended motion at the moment would be commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors in violation of approved property management plans or conditions of approval. All complaints shall be documented in annual reports and followed up upon by permittee. That's the current motion on the floor, which is up for discussion and then a vote.
Thank you.
No.
If they choose to open it up to public comment, then everybody can have the opportunity to comment, but if not, then, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a need for further discussion on that motion, or do we have a second?
If there's no second, then it dies.
I would like it read to me one more time.
I'd love to read it to you one more time.
Thank you.
Commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors in violation of approved property management plans or conditions of approval, period. All complaints received shall be documented and followed up upon by permittee.
Well, I mean, we'll just say that. So in regards to talking about, having metrics and then having not being able to enforce it is where we are with illegal grows right now. So it's gonna be a moot point. I think what you put together is the best model that's out there. I mean, I would second it just because, the fire service, we're frustrated with multiple different things that are rules and regulations that aren't enforced. So they have no grounds. So I totally appreciate it. It would be nice to be able to say you're at 37 parts per million, but if there's nobody that's gonna go and enforce it, it's a waste of time. I would second what we have.
That's a second?
That's a second.
Wonderful.
Um,
All in favor of
so wait, we have a motion and a second, but just for, wordsmithing, instead of followed up upon, let's say reviewed.
Yep,
There's no buts allowed.
Reviewed by.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, argument.
So we have a motion and a second. Let's do this by like raising your hand. Oh, wait, Will?
Was that, and reviewed by the permittee? Is that, just asking you to click?
Yes,
That's what you said, right?
yes.
So the enforcement is on the permittee?
No, so the enforcement, as Michelle had mentioned, is handled in the actual, there's a processes and enforcement section
Okay.
in the plan, so it would be handled there. So this would be just that the permittee has to document, and I don't like the word review because I could review something and then
Addressed?
not do anything about it.
How about addressed?
So I would prefer, document and address them, not review.
Again, but the acting party in that addressing
Is
is
the
the
permittee,
permittee.
yes, correct. So
Probably part of the annual report.
I got that.
Yeah. So the amended motion would read, commercial cannabis operations shall not propagate objectionable odors in violation of approved property management plans or conditions of approval. All complaints received shall be documented and addressed by the permittee. That is the motion. Do you still second it, Willie?
I do.
Okay. Now,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand if you are on the task force.
5 hands raised.
Okay, I guess that does it. Any opposed if you are on the task force?
1 opposed.
Okay, and is there any, that's everybody, right? No abstentions?
Yeah, no, that's everyone.
Okey doke. Thank you.
motion passed.
We did it. We
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was good.
Yeah, that clock's not
It's a
right.
hard one.
I know, I was like.
So we have electrical generators, but
Another small.
okay, so if you take a look on page 27 of our agenda, number 4, electrical generators, it looks like there was action that relates to generators, but it's listed above number 4. Is that?
Yep.
Like, I think that got put in the wrong spot on August 26, 2024. It talks about generators right above number 4 at the bottom of page 27.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if we took a.
It looks like the
I
motion
don't know
was
if
actually
it's action.
withdrawn.
though.
Oh, it was, I made a motion and then
Yeah.
we made a motion to
Move it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we didn't
motion.
finish
So
that.
no
It was-
action was taken.
Yeah. No. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
I think electrical generators.
I know. Should it be?
So we haven't taken any action, or the task force has not taken any action on this yet.
No, we discussed it and had public comment and everything last time.
All right, just a quick check. We're at 2:20. We have about 10 more minutes for today. Did we want to tackle electrical generators? Keep in mind we have public comment still to do too.
And that this is under the prohibited section.
Looks like we're going ahead. Okay. So currently we have wording that that regulates electrical generators only for indoor and mixed light, not for outdoor cultivation.
I'm trying to remember the discussion from. Well,
I think I missed the meeting, so I'm not sure what the added clarification that we were going for included. Does anybody on the task force remember that part?
I think my notes from the last meeting, which I believe on this was August 26th, note all commercial as language that might have superseded the indoor and mixed light cultivation language.
All right, so kind of adding outdoor cultivation as included in generator regulation.
It seems implicit, yes.
Yeah, so the motion that I had made was cultivation cannabis shall not rely, well, not cultivation cannabis, that's the error. Commercial cannabis cultivation shall not rely on gasoline, diesel, propane, or similar fuels power generators as a primary source of power and shall only allow properly permitted, when applicable, generators for temporary use in the event of a power outage or circumstances beyond the permittee's control, which may include the pursuit of a permanent power source and proof of such on the permittee's behalf. So
okay, so that was
include all cannabis operations, and that basically generators are never allowed as a primary source of power unless there's extenuating circumstances.
okay.
That was the motion that didn't make it.
So it sounds like we had input then that was talking about how sometimes it's taking a long time or our more remote located cultivation farms to get power.
And that's why that last sentence.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me. Do you have any idea of what the added language for clarification might have been as part of that last motion? Why it was withdrawn from taking action that day?
I think we were like right at the 2:30
was
mark,
timing.
and we were just like, we can't finish this today.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there was public comment, but we just sort of ran out of time.
Okay.
It's
So
sort of like-
great. So now we're back then
I'm
to
sorry.
where we were before. Was there any further comment from the task force before we open it up to public input?
Real quick, Paul, Chief Spada, Paul Blue had me print out regarding noise control. So I kind of printed out some different things that are out there that are available to combat some of the noise that might be created for the generators. Use.
Okay, if there's no further comment from the task force, let's go ahead and open it up to public. We've got 2 hands up. We'll start with Sarah and then go to Mike.
Hi there, Sarah Bodner, consultant. One of the comments that was made at the very end of this discussion last time was looking into the county's language elsewhere that had permitted generator use. We have a couple of case studies in this because of the new ordinances that were adopted around temporary drying structures and also hoop houses for outdoor cultivation. So we have already language that the Board of Supervisors approved, and it was discussed to go take a look at that language and bring that back and see if the task force was amenable to using that in this case. This is an area where state law exists, and there are specs around generators that can be used associated with legal cannabis grows. And I believe the 2 use cases that I just mentioned refer to state law. And then also there are some other conditions. So again, it was the ordinances that were adopted around temporary drying structures and the use of hoops as part of outdoor cultivation as permitted by the county. And there were some specs around generators there. I will underline the comment that you just mentioned, Maria, about the importance of generators on a short-term basis, because the nature of the many of the properties that are permitted for cannabis use is that they're very outlying rural properties that do not have existing PG&E drops, and PG&E won't consider bringing power to those properties until a use permit is obtained. So once the use permit is obtained, that starts the clock on the wait, which we have seen can regularly be multiple years. And many planning commission hearings have contemplated the temporary use of generators with that in mind, because it's of course a huge burden for an operator if they can't have any sort of temporary source of power. So I would highly support looking at that language that has been accepted and approved by the BOS elsewhere and consider folding that into the cultivation ordinance. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Go ahead, Mike. Oh, wait, maybe I have to do some. Hold on. Allow to talk. Oh, nope, not you. Wait, sorry. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for unmuting me. Yeah, I was at the last meeting when one of to tag on to the last comment about some of the comments were places that don't have access to power, and can a permit from air quality be allowed or something like that? I'll leave that back to the committee, but I do remember those comments. For my perspective, just looking for language of some sort of standard about if any generators use that it is UL approved, that it meets California Electrical Code and California Fire Code, and small engine compliance code, defensible space, that they have all the fire safety requirements as far as water and extinguishing agents and hand tools, because we are in those rural areas. And I'll leave my comments of that. I'm sure Chief Cepeda will echo the same thing.
Thank you. Mike, could you send us an email with that list as well? Because it's likely that in the code, it would say it would be, or I mean, what our code would reflect is that it meets all applicable codes, but those exact ones that you just cited should go into our conditions of approval as mitigations for wildfire. So yeah.
I'll work with Chief Cepeda and Paul Blues as the recognized representatives and share that information with them and have them bring it back.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I think a lot of that is included in the generator permit. language.
Great. Okay, let's move on to Angela and
Real quick, Maria, is to, for the fuel supply and storage, is that they're following the hazmat business plans through environmental health. And then if they have a storage greater than 1,320, they're doing a still response plan.
That's common conditions too.
Okay.
1,320
Yeah, that's good.
Gallons.
It's not 50.
Well, no, 50 requires you to have an HMPP by the Health and Safety Code 6.95, but if you have greater than 1,320, then it requires a spill prevention plan up to 9,999 gallons. You can write it yourself. After 10,000 SB done by an engineer.
Gotcha.
Okay.
1,319 gallons.
19.9.
Do I have to go ahead, Maria?
are we ready for Angela's input?
Yes.
Okay. So I think this was another one that the air quality was going to be consulted on with odor, and I don't know if they were. And I also did at the last meeting asked to consider including language that generators would be insulated to reduce noise pollution, and I think that's what Chief Cepeda handed out there with some different options. The last thing was to recommend to change the current language to the first line being all commercial cannabis activities, with the exception to those in compliance with Ordinance 3135, shall not rely on. And then at the end of that, also adding in emergency use shall be reported to CDD and should not exceed more than 72 hours without CDD approval. I think changing it to all commercial cannabis activities because you don't want to see manufacturing or processing using generators. So it's not just cultivation. I think it's going to be all operations. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Sarah, did you have some further comment? Your hand is still up. Oh, no, it's down. Okay, seeing no further Zoom room comment, is there any public input in the room? Seeing none? Oh.
Bill Wilson, in regards to generators, there is the health problem as far as, or the hazard problem as far as fuel and oil storage. But it seems to me a simple decibel meter is going to be able to tell how loud it is. 70 decibels is what is considered above, is harmful to people. I mean, wouldn't it just be able to use a decibel meter and say that is too loud or that is correct?
Yeah, we do have ways of measuring that already that are in place and listed in other parts of the ordinance. The meters depend, or the thresholds depend on what type of use it is, residential versus commercial or industrial, as well as what time of day. So yeah, we got that one down. Thank you. Is there any further public input? Okay, we'll bring it back to the task force.
So we have a motion.
Oh, I didn't.
No.
That motion was withdrawn. So I would.
Or any further discussion?
I think we're still missing some elements of the discussion being that language from the temporary hoop house. I'd like to see that inserted. The same language.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's all. And I'd like that language to be pulled and brought into the meeting, the temporary hoop house language, the state language. That way we can mirror it. I mean, I don't think there's any opposition to including all cannabis activities and being in compliance.
If that is the consensus of the task force, then we can make note of that in the minutes and we'll have that ready for the next meeting.
Lots of nods going on.
See a lot of nodding.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's do that. So that'll conclude what we're tackling today. Let's move on to public input. Is there anything for public input not related to our agenda? Go ahead, Holly.
Oh, hi there. Once again, I want to bring up the concept specifically since you also talked about annual reports, compliance things, complaints, etc. that we actually insert a discussion on annual report, compliance report requirements, and the process and the conditions of use under the 73.6 administrative processes and procedures between the application process and the renewal of use permit, because that's a big portion. It's the entire 10 years that these, permittees are operating. So once again, I want to request that.
Okay, thanks, Holly. Any public input from in the room? I don't see any. If there is no further public input, we will go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Sarah Bodnar, consultant. I'm just wondering if staff and the task force feel like we're going to be on track to come up with recommendations as requested by the end of the year, and if any additional meetings might need to be scheduled. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I don't know at this time. We're going to see how quickly we can get that review done. Just letting you know, though the task force is a priority for us and getting it done by the end of the year is a priority for us. We're also juggling Lake County 2050 LAPAC meetings for 8 planning areas and a bunch of other projects. So, but we will try to have that review and comparison to state law finished before the next meeting. If anybody in the task force feels like doing that kind of an eval and helping us out, getting us a little further ahead, feel free. If anybody out there has free time. If not, we'll try to have that done, as well as pulling that language from the hoop houses and the temporary drying structures to have that available for the task force also. All right. Then that concludes our meeting. We're going to go ahead and adjourn at 2:35. Thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
And we are sticking with 1 p.m. at the next meeting? Yep.
Check